Welcome to Future Sense Now, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. An e-zine of the Futures Forum live online. We exchange ideas, information, and inspiration about the futures we want. Get Future Sense Now with host Dr. Claire Nelson, futurist and editor of Human Futures.
Greetings and welcome to Future Sense Now, an online e-magazine of the Futures Forum. February is Black History Month, and we're having a conversation on the future history of Black America. Specifically, we're exploring how Blacks in America might be faring in the years 2030 and beyond. And we're focusing on 2030 to begin because, first of all, the US will be a majority minority country by 2030. And also will no longer be the world's superpower, sole superpower. We've gone through a bruising election. It's the year of COVID era. And we are also 2030 is 2 more presidential cycles away. So a lot could happen in the next 9 years. Another thing is that 2030 is the pull year for the global UN Sustainable Development Goals, of which there are 17. And Sustainable Development Goal 10 in particular focuses on inequality. And so because that's a big thrust of what Black America faces, inequality of access, of outcomes, of everything from beginning to end, I do think that this is a good framing for our conversation to help us shape what we're thinking could become the future history that we want to see. So I'm here with George Smith, unknown, not known to some, but known to many, including myself. And the way I know him, and he probably can expand on this, I know him in one function only. I know him as the founder of the National Society of Black Engineers. And I just want to say that, I first heard of this organization when I was a senior at University of Buffalo back in, maybe I should date myself, but back in the 70s, and they had just formed actually at Purdue. And that factor one, I did try to get a thing started at Buffalo where nobody was interested, because most of the Black people I knew were all foreign-born Blacks. They didn't care about stuff like that. And 2, knowing that Purdue had this organization probably led me to a little bit of comfort in applying to go there for my master's degree, because I knew at least I'd see a few Black people in there if I showed up. I still end up being the only Black engineer in my class, but still, at least I had company. I had students I was teaching. So greetings, George. Welcome. That is a way to tell you I already love you before even knowing you, because of your really pioneering work in helping change the conversation around our role in the STEM community. And I wanted to ask you to help me think about the future that we want in 2030, beginning with really recognizing that we're talking about possibility of 8 billion people, right? Industry 4.0 will be totally full blown. We'll see how, in fact, COVID has shaped more deepening of AI and monitoring technologies and sensors everywhere. We're anticipating that unions will really have their back against the wall, unless big companies like Amazon will allow unions to take place. But we're anticipating perhaps even more potential social change that could, if not managed properly, lead to even more chaos. And none of us want that. So as we think about then your vantage point, as somebody who is really, you have an engineering mind, and you also have an activist / advocate mind. You're a change maker, right? That's what you do. When you think of 2030 then, and how inequality could emerge if we don't pay attention, if we don't do something now, what are some things you're thinking about at first glance that the Black community ought to be doing now, so that our trajectory ends up at a more positive, the positive side of how this could go? What are your thoughts on that? Let's start there.
Okay. We have already entered into the STEM economy. So we need to understand that. And the STEM economy will continue to expand for now and into the foreseeable future. And for us to begin to thrive, we're going to need to have the skills to participate in the growth of the STEM economy. And so that starts in second grade math class. And so what we should be doing now is we should be paying close attention to the second grade math skill development of all of our minority kids. We need to focus on that because they are the ones who are the furthest behind in terms of testing for their proficiency. So that's where I think we need to start.
So I'm going to jump right in there, because now we have what I am calling a possibility of a 4-year turning radius, right? Possibility. Um, Second grade, good place to start. Yesterday, we dealt with, and of course I'm timing myself there, but I just need to say that yesterday was, in the case you're hearing this 2 years later, was the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. And we're talking about that very thing, how early it is that you can begin to introduce STEM literacy as a construct. Second grade, how can we, from an institutional perspective, rapidly then, right, prepare the cradle or the bed for these second graders? They're 7 years old. They're going into poorly equipped schools. What should we be thinking about as advocates to be addressing our policymakers at the city level, the county level, both the local education board and the state boards, at the national level, the Federal Department of Education? What should we be doing then if we had, let's say, a George Smith plan for, marshaling resources to basically, bam, impact the second grade now, beginning September 2021, right? So by the time they're entering into middle school, 4 years from now, or high school, 4 into 6, middle school, they're ready, primed and ready to go.
Okay, so you mentioned a 4-year turning radius.
Yes.
Number one thing we need to have is a sense of urgency. So I'm going to ask for a 3-year turning radius.
Okay.
And then in that 4th year, you'll have evidence that the plan is working.
Got you.
Okay, so now I mentioned second grade is where we start, but that's not where we finish. The focus should be on K through 8.
Mm-hmm.
Studies have shown that 8th grade is basically the final deadline for students who have developed math proficiency well enough that they can prepare themselves in high school to enter STEM. So any program that just starts in high school, basically what's happening is you're just taking advantage of the pipeline of students who are going to make it through K through 8 math with a high proficiency level anyway. Okay, and this has been historic in our community. There's a certain percentage of our kids who get it. They just have the knack for math, and so they're the ones who tend to rise into the quantitative professions. But we have many, many more students who are capable if they are given the proper education and training. So right now, we have a system where math is presented to students, and it's presented in a boring way. And, those who don't have the knack are not interested. And so, they tune out. Well, as parents and grandparents, we cannot allow them to tune out because it's not as exciting as a video game. What we're going to have to do is make math mandatory. Math mastery must be mandatory from the K through 8 level. It's just, when I was growing up, my parents didn't care if I didn't want to wash the dishes or not. They didn't care if I didn't want to make my bed. Okay, that bed had to be made, those dishes had to be washed, and math needs to be treated the same way. If students learn math, they will have the critical skills necessary to learn everything else and excel in everything else. So, we need to focus on math. And there's actually been studies that have stated that kindergarten math assessment is a better predictor of third grade math and reading competency. Okay, so this is how early in life the importance of mathematics presents itself.
Wow. So your brain, just really you're saying your brain gets into a groove as early as, yeah, kindergarten.
Yes, yes, yes. So, I mean, there's several levels here that have to be addressed. When we think about school, we think about PTA, Parents and Teachers Association. And what's happening is we have an environment where we have totally delegated 100% of our children's education to the school. So if we send the kids to school, if they don't come back educated, then it's the teacher's fault. No, that's not the way it works. Okay, we cannot 100% delegate that to the schools. At the same time, the teachers get children in, and those that don't perform well, then the teachers are pointing the finger at the parents for not having prepared the kids to come in and and be ready to go and excel in school. So we got to stop all that finger pointing. All right, this has to be a team effort. Parents, teachers, where you start, but it doesn't end there, because we have to marshal in the resources of grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, older brothers and siblings. This needs to basically be a Marshall Plan, okay? We need to understand the urgency of this. That's number one. And then we need to stop, pointing fingers at other people and start asking, what can I do personally to help my child succeed in math? And the first thing that we've got to stop saying is, well, I wasn't good at math either. I didn't like math either. Okay, we've got to stop that. All right. And then as soon as the child says math is boring, that's your number one indicator that this is one that you're going to have to work with. Now, I had this situation with my own grandson.
Yeah.
He said math was boring. This kid is brilliant, and when we have so many brilliant kids, but they're not interested in school. So he said math is boring. I said, well, it may be, but it's mandatory. Okay. So I was thinking, what can I do? Because parents they're busy working. Okay, the parents don't have time to follow these school curriculums the way maybe parents in the 50s and 60s did. So we're going to have to have parents recognize that they need help. Okay, all right, they need to recognize that, and so they need to be looking for people within their own community, within their household, within their building that they're in, within their block. Okay, look for people who can help tutor these kids in math. Now, the statistics say that 87% of the Black eighth graders in public schools perform at below proficiency level. Now, proficiency level means that you have mastered it. So they may be doing okay,
Yeah.
but they haven't mastered eighth grade mathematics, and that should be the goal. The goal, we should not seek mediocre goals. The goal should be mastery. Okay, and we should not, right now, if we're talking about 87% are performing below proficiency level, see, that doesn't mean anything to me unless I know how many kids are that, how many people. Business, education, life is all about people. It's not about percentages. Okay, so I looked up and I found a statistic for public schools. There are 600,000 Black kids enrolled in public schools, roughly 600,000 in every grade level from kindergarten through 12th grade. Okay, so when you get to 8th grade, if you're in a neighborhood of 600,000, 550,000 to 600,000, you take 87% of that. Okay, you're talking about 485, almost 485,000 kids, people that we are losing to any hopes of becoming proficient in math and being able to participate in the emerging STEM economy.
Yeah, I want to stop you right there and say, so we have a good number. We will have 400 something thousand, so let's work with that, right? So we're talking about this idea of, I'm calling it George Smith plan and not the Marshall plan, right? Or in this case, maybe want to put it up to the NESBIT plan or whatever. And we're talking about this idea of creating new linkages. As we're looking out on the current world, we see we're at home because of COVID. Some people are back at school, some are not. Some people are also experiencing additional, let's say, inequality because of lack of access to the internet, right? Or they can't afford, they might have it in their neighborhood, but they can't afford the data or whatever. I don't know how that's working out. But I wanted to think about the things in this case of what government can do to support the vision you have, and what the private sector can do also to support this, and how, if we were to say create, I'm calling it a mobilization force, to say, okay, we're going to really try and transform those numbers in the next 3 years, right? So we have a good 25 or 30% of those coming out of the, no, we're talking about 87%, you have cut that to 50%. Let's say that was a goal of people who are not at the master level. No, you have more people mastering. What role do you think the private sector could play in sort of putting people like yourself, in a sense, almost to work in this space, or the government could pay? Because when I hear things like a universal basic income, and I'm saying, but to do what? People can't be sitting at home doing nothing, collecting a check. So how can we marry these ideas of, having a core of people who might be skilled in doing things to an idea like the universal basic income, if we have professionals who are no longer employed because the jobs have gone to China or whatever, or India? What should we be thinking about asking the government for, the state level governments, federal governments for, in terms of providing support for professionals to be reskilled who already have some skills, to kind of act as these math mobilizers?
Well, so everything I talked about so far has been talking about what the family can do, what the village can do.
Yeah.
And we cannot wait on the government. We cannot wait on corporations to get this started. So what I'm talking about is something that needs to be discussed at the kitchen table every day, and people need to start acting on homework assignments every day, okay? Because, I don't have faith that the government will respond, or that corporations will respond in time to save the kids who are going to be graduating from 8th grade this year, next year, and the year after. Okay, I don't have faith in that. But if I had a wish list, and in my wish list, the perfect scenario would be to have both government and corporate support for a national tutor program. Okay, and the first people that I would like to see employed in this national tutor program are the minority kids who are in high school and middle school, who have distinguished themselves as proficient in math. So the A and B math students, because these students they're in the neighborhood already. Okay,
Yes.
they're in the village, in the church. Okay, these are the ones that we're proud about, and talk about they're getting straight A's and patting them on the back and telling Susie, you need to be like, Mary. Okay, these kids, we know who they are. And so what will happen if the government creates an opportunity to hire these kids as math tutors? Now, all of a sudden, there's a direct link between math and financial success. at an early age. And the only kids who are able to participate are the ones who have demonstrated math proficiency. Okay, the other kids who don't have, an income because they don't have the math will see these kids as role models. Okay, and then they'll want to be like them. So that is the environment that I would like to see created. If I had a wish list.
That's actually a very powerful idea, and I really want to pause on it and think about, because I just had a lot of things flashing through my head. I could almost see the national math mobilization mission or whatever, and I could see some of these kids earning the credit, and the credit is like not necessarily cash in your pocket, but the cash goes into their college fund automatically, right? And so they're not.
I love that.
And they're not only getting the college fund, in addition to the actual cash to pay off the college fund, they're actually earning the right to, we're talking about free college, but I'm saying, well, who's going to pay for it? The taxpayers, somebody has to pay for it. But can you imagine if you were to mobilize 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 A students right now to do training? Number one, what I learned as an engineer myself, when I ended up running the study group, that's how I got A's. So can you imagine these kids are already getting A's and B's, and they now started teaching this stuff. Their own internal skill level is going to rush it up. So they're winning on two fronts. So they might get some cash in their pockets still, just to have, so they can have things to look cool, right? Because they need that.
Yeah, they got to get cash in the pocket.
Yeah.
It can't just be all going into a college fund.
Right. The instant thing is not there. The instant thing is not there. Then the rest of it goes into their quote unquote their college fund, right?
I love that part of it. I love that as a matching.
I'm feeling that right about now. I'm feeling it so much right about now. I'm ready to sign up. Listen, I'm ready to go back and put it on the documents that have to go forward. So as we think about this, then how might technology, because we have the government part, so let's put in the private sector part now, because we have to kind of cook this thing, right? How then would the private sector play a role in this? I mean, they need people to hire, right? We're having a problem with this H-1 visa issue and all these jobs being outsourced to India, right? When we're saying people here can't do it. So then how can the private sector play their part in rebuilding the American or reskilling the American workforce and making us so we have the money to earn a living wage and a better wage, because we have the skills to do that? What should they be doing? Because they have to be part of the social compact. They must be.
Yes. Well, it's a three-legged stool. You have the family and the community is one leg of it. The government is another leg of it. And then the corporations are another leg of it. The corporations are the ones who are going to benefit because the skill level of the workforce in their communities is going to increase, and the people will be better able to help them achieve their corporate objectives. So, the corporations should be involved from the inception. Now, the problem we have in America right now is every corporation's got their own plan. And every state's got their own plan, and every city and municipality, they all have their own plan, and nothing is coordinated. So that's why I emphasize this point about a national plan. We need to have a national plan, okay? And it needs to be discussed everywhere.
But George, you can do the national plan. You founded a national organization. That part is easy for you. I'm blushing over that because that to me already exists. You are the founder of NESBIT. You and your 2 or 3 or 4 friends, right? So you already know how to do national planning. So let's figure out how we're going to get the corporations to move, because we know we can do the planning part. How are we going to get these technology companies, the Googles, the Microsofts, the Teslas, the Amazons, the Boston Dynamics, the Lockheed Martins, to not just do the usual? Yes, they're doing K through 12 stuff, but in other words, what might we offer as an argument to say, hey, this is it,
Okay, so they need to have a long-term plan. That's number one.
Okay,
and they don't have a long-term plan for this.
Okay.
Now, so as an example of an organization that took a long-term view and was rewarded for it, you can look at Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because now, first of all, I'll give my age away. I'm older than Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Okay. So, I remember this world before they were here.
You don't look like it.
Well, I am. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, um, the example that I'll give you for Apple is I was an employee of Hewlett Packard, and I was in the district sales office in Chicago, and I was at the regional headquarters, um, and we were selling technology to corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was with the part of the organization that was selling electronic components, diodes, transistors, integrated circuits.
Mm-hmm.
But we had other organizations that were selling instrumentation and selling computers. Computers were actually, that was new. Okay.
Yes.
So there you had IBM
Mm-hmm.
and you had Hewlett Packard
Mm-hmm.
and you had these upstarts,
Mm-hmm.
Apple and Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of the money before that in the industry was coming from sales to large corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, that was what people were pursuing. Okay. What Apple recognized is that there was going to be a great future in personal computing.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Apple did is they went into the elementary schools and into the middle schools and high schools, and they gave them free computers. And so those of us in the industry who were watching this happen, I put myself in it. I didn't know any better, right? We were laughing at Apple going in and giving away all this free hardware to these students, and so we're thinking we can't make any money by calling on elementary schools. But what Apple was doing is they were planting seeds. They were planting Apple seeds in these schools, okay? And all these kids were becoming familiar with Apple. So guess what happened 10 years later? And these kids go into the workplace, and now they're making decisions about what hardware to buy. Do they want IBM hardware, or do they want this cool Apple equipment that they have grown to love and they already know how to use? That's what happened. Okay. I don't care what you read in Fortune magazine, Forbes, and all the rest of it. Okay. Those writers were not on the street like I was. This is what happened. And this is why people became so excited. Now, we have examples of corporations who do that now, today. I'm here in Chicagoland, and Chicago is the headquarters of Boeing. Well, Boeing is going to elementary schools and high schools, and they are recruiting kids. They're telling minority kids that we want you to come work for us. Okay. All right. So everyone else is going, and they're trying to cherry pick the top students from the elite colleges and so forth. Okay. But Boeing is saying, look, we want you to come work for us. We also have Commonwealth Edison. They are great supporters. Okay. And we also have a company called Molex. These are companies in Chicago where, I see these companies participating in these STEM science fairs because they have a long-term view. And that's what all these corporations need to be doing.
Yeah, and I could see that they could definitely be seeding this future. Now, we kind of racing down to the end with about 10 minutes left. And I'm thinking about when you think about the future technologies, as an engineer looking out at the technologies that are emerging, whether it's AI or robotics or, Internet of Things, 3D printing, what else, quantum computing, cybersecurity. what are the things you would think we have to probably be concerned with as consumers now, not as educators also? What are the things as consumers and parents and we have to be concerned with in terms of how they might disadvantage us in the future? And so doing, we should then be doing something about it to not end up being disadvantaged in the future.
Well, I forget what the name of this technology is. I think they call it facial recognition.
Ah, yes.
And this has caused some controversy of late.
Yes.
That the people who are designing facial recognition haven't designed it such that it recognizes Black folks, with the same level of accuracy that it recognizes other people.
Yes.
So the reason for that is because they don't have a diverse enough team in the process of making the decisions about that technology.
Yes.
So what we need to be doing is making sure that these teams are diverse, that they do have, people of color, and that the people listen to them. Okay, it's one thing to hire someone into the organization,
Yes.
but if you hire the person in the organization and they come to work every day and they, put in, the work and they make their contributions, and you don't listen to them, then
Yes.
you can't benefit from their
Which is what
opinion.
often happens, which is what often happens. And so I think one of the things I'm wondering if you could share with me is when you look at NESBIT today, it's still largely a student organization, but NESBIT professionals, which used to be called Alumni Extension, what do you think we ought to be doing differently? Those of us who are engineers, who graduated back in, I like to say this word, back in the days before the PC was invented. My favorite phrase. Especially when I'm talking to my godchildren who are like 9 and 10. What do you think we ought to be doing? As you say, at the end of the day, we have to do what we can do, right? What
Yeah.
is it that we ought to be doing as NESBIT professionals then? If we say, okay, we have a 3-year turning radius, what can we put in place with the access that we do have to push this national plan out?
Okay, so the number one thing that they need to do is to start talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The number two thing they need to do is to make themselves visible within the community as role models. Okay, simply by just being there and making sure people know what they do, and expressing to people the joy they have in their work, why they chose their career, why they have the lifestyle they have. That's the second thing. They need to start becoming more of an advocate for STEM jobs. Okay, um, and then um, they need to get involved as mentors. So mentors and tutors. That's what they need to be doing. And so there's levels. The more recent graduates, because they're fresh on their technology learning, they can mentor college kids. The college kids can then mentor high school kids. The high school mentor and tutor. Okay, the high school kids can then mentor and tutor the elementary, K through 8 kids. And so what they should be doing is setting up special interest groups that are focused in on how they can locally impact the math performance. So NESBE chapters, they need to start adopting schools. And you can't solve every problem. You can't fix everything everywhere. You've got to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So every NESBE chapter, NESBE professional chapter, they need to adopt a college. Okay. And focus on helping those kids in that college. And every NESBE student chapter,
Mm-hmm.
collegiate level chapter, they need to start adopting a high school,
Mm-hmm.
and not just running into the schools that are selective enrollment that have these kids that already have the knack who are going to make it through anyway, Okay, they need to be impacting the kids who don't have that, because they're the ones who need to see role models so that they can aspire to them. So the first level is impacting aspirations. Just doing what I just said will impact aspirations.
Yes.
But we also have to impact preparation. And that's where these, specific math tutoring, and, in my experience, math, becoming a math tutor that's not a short-term, that's not a weekend job, okay?
Exactly.
That's not a weekend job. That's a Monday through Thursday job, being a
Yes.
math tutor.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, now we have a lot of people talking about, watching their shows. Okay, watching the shows on TV, and watching American Idol and whatever all this is, all right? Forget about that, all right? The Marshall Plan, this is George's Marshall Plan, okay? Forget about that, turn that stuff off, okay? Record it. You can still watch your shows, but you need to have at least an hour every day. So every person that is competent in math needs to establish a relationship with a student. Every person.
I'm listening to you and I'm writing down things like the Math Hour project, the Math Hour Impact STEM initiative. I'm just writing down things that are coming to me, and we're going to wrap up now. And I have just 2 questions to close. I think you've given me a lot of food for thought, a lot of food that can actually turn into immediate policy, based on your premise that 2030, we're not going to be in the workforce and thriving. Come back to my favorite word, is thrival. We have to move beyond survival. So I totally agree with you. We have to move to thrival. And your basic premise is that thrival will require that in 2030, certainly those kids who are, let's say, just about to enter high school now, so they have 2 years before grade 8, right? This is like, if we had to pick an entry point, that would be the last entry point before, if we're going to save them for 9 years from now. If they're in grade 8 already, and it's like, wow, we're on the edge, we may be able to get a few, just maybe. But if we were to certainly start at grade 8 and push this thing out. So when you think about this now, I presume, I'm going to ask you, are you optimistic? I have 3 terms: optimistic, pessimistic, or neutralistic about the future as you see it, given what you know and given what you see could happen. And then the last question would be, what is the headline you would like to see based on this national plan? If we were to able to do something, what would that look like? So let's start with, are you optimistic, pessimistic, or neutralistic? My word.
I'm optimistic about our ability to do this. Okay, I love
that.
I know we can do this. Okay.
Yes.
I am not optimistic about the pace at which we are going to do it.
Gotcha.
Because it's got to be more than just George saying it. We need 100,000 people saying what I'm saying right now, and committed to doing something.
I had 150,000, but go ahead.
Okay.
I know it's 150,000.
Like better. Yes, that's what we need. So what was the second part of that?
Well, before I ask the second question, let me just say this. I picked 150,000 because I put all the professional organizations, right? And the Black Greek organizations can surely find 150,000 people. Okay, now the second question then becomes, what is the aspirational headline? In the year 2030, when we're doing a Black History Month review, and we say, oh my God, after COVID, this happened, and we started this thing in 2021, and here's what we have achieved. What does that headline say? What have we achieved?
Okay, so I don't have a catchy headline for you, but the
just
world.
Tell me, I'll rephrase it if necessary.
The world I want to see.
Yes.
Is a world where Black history is totally integrated into American history, so that we don't have hidden figure stories that keep popping up. You know, we have such a rich history of Black inventors, Black mathematicians, Black engineers, scientists that no one knows about. So I want to see a world in which Black inventors who are in the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and by the way, there are 26. I want to see a world where we know as much about them as we know about the athletes who are in the NFL Hall of Fame or the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, you know, or the National Basketball Association Hall of Fame. Okay, but that's the type of world that I want to see, and I you know, I applaud. I mean, I love sports. I applaud all of the great sports heroes, and I think they are role models for work ethic. Okay, so I want to see our academicians, you know, our kids who are not destined to play in the NBA and, you know, the NFL, you know, they know who they are. Okay. You know, they know who they are.
Oh, just stop faking it, right? They're
So
not
you
going to
go to
make
high
it.
school, you go to high school, there's 20 kids on that basketball team. And, you know, probably none of them will get to the pros, but everyone else who's not on that team is not going to play a professional sport. You see what I'm saying? So they know who they are. And, you know, and then for those athletes who do, you know, who are at the top of the hill, we have role models there. The Jacksonville Jaguars backup quarterback, Joshua Dobbs, is a NASA scientist.
Yeah, I found that out recently.
Yes, yes, yes. There's another fellow named, can't remember his last name. His first name is Vernon. Can't remember the college he graduated from, but he's an engineer and he played in the NFL. You know, one of the founders of the Society of Black Engineers, the precursor to NESBIT, was a scholarship athlete, a football player, you know, starter, captain. He was drafted into the NFL by the Detroit Lions. Okay. And he was studying electrical engineering. So you can do both. This is what I want our athletes to understand. I want our athletes to understand that same discipline that they are learning from their coaches, that needs to be applied to their academic studies too. There is time for both. And we have examples. You know, my grandson is a talented little athlete. Didn't get it from me. Okay. You know, he may have gotten his love of the sport from me, but he didn't get the genetics that give him the ability to play the way he plays. He did not get that from me, okay? I just want to make this clear.
You know, yes, thank you so much, George. I just want to say that as you talk about athletes, I want to point out that what LeBron James is doing for me, I just wish I could sit with him and just talk to him and say, okay, can we just add in these two pieces right here about the STEM part? You know, I wish I could get to him somehow and say, I love what you're doing. And by the way, talk to some of your friends to just copy what you're doing in their places, right?
Well, you've heard about the debate between who's the GOAT, greatest of all time, between Michael Jordan and LeBron James, right? Well, Jordan is my GOAT, greatest of all time in basketball. But LeBron James is my favorite of all time because of his commitment to the community, you know, because of the school that he started, because of his business enterprises and his social consciousness. He is my vote. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, somebody else is going to have to do more than LeBron James to knock him off that pedestal.
Oh my God, he's a pedestal for me too, man. And I'm not a sports fan.
So when you meet him, tell him I said hi.
But I just want to meet him. I said, God, please let me meet LeBron James. I've been sending up the prayers.
Tell him
Every time the STEM advisory conference. Listen, George, you and I am going to get on LeBron James, and LeBron will become the ambassador for math.
I have two words to say to LeBron James right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lebron. And we are asking you to be an ambassador for our 150,000 Impact STEM initiative, where we will launch math hours in every household. And NESBIT and other partners of the professional organizations would finance 150,000 mentors to stream across America and reach out and make a difference. I just want to thank you, George, for these brilliant ideas that you've put on the table, an insightful conversation. I'm excited. We're going to keep on talking, but more importantly, I never talk about things I don't intend to act on. So I'm just warning you, right?
Yes. I want to make one clarification.
Yes.
One clarification. I am not the founder of the National Society of Black Engineers. I'm one of 7 founders.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And the key founder is Dr. Arthur Bond. He was the 12th Black PhD in electrical engineering in the history of the United States. And I was lucky enough, we were lucky enough to have him as our mentor when we entered Purdue University. And he's the guy who set up what now has become known as the Minority Engineering Program at Purdue.
Yes.
And his work at Purdue influenced minority engineering program development all over the country. I actually have a letter from the former dean of engineering at Purdue University where it spells out all these letters of gratitude that came in from other people that were involved in the early stages of development of minority engineering initiatives in this country. And all of the fingers point back to Arthur Bond's contributions.
Dr. Arthur Bond.
Dr. Arthur Bond, and his name has become sort of, unsung.
No, let's bring it back up. I'm all for that because, we forget who called the first meeting.
Yeah.
Right? He called the first meeting, basically.
That's right.
Yeah. I understand. I totally understand. So thank you for the clarification. I knew you were one of several, but I've never heard his name. So thank you for that, Dr. Arthur Bond. I'll remember that going forward. So thank you again for taking time. Thank you for this insightful conversation on the future history of Black America and how we can co-create it. And if you have listened to this, please share it. Thank you for joining us on Future Sense Now, the online e-magazine of the Futures Forum Live, where we explore salient ideas for sustainable futures. Remember, the future is embedded in the landscape of our present, so go out and seize the day. Until next time, I say safe journeys, and in Jamaica, we say walk good.
I say well done, Dr. Claire Nelson.
Thank you for listening to Future Sense Now with Dr. Claire Nelson. Future Sense Now is produced by the Futures Forum in Washington, D.C. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Remember, our futures are embedded in the landscape of our present stories. Seize the day, share this story, and share the future.